Welcome everyone to Coffee with a Codex. My name is Dot Porter, and I am a curator in the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books and Manuscripts at the University of Pennsylvania. I am here with Louis Meiselman, who is the cataloging librarian of the, I can't get your, what is your title?
I guess Rare Judaica cataloging.
Rare Judaica cataloging at the CAJS Center, which is where we are now. So usually when I present, I'm at the Kislak Center, which is in on 34th and Walnut in West Philadelphia. Right now we are in Old City. We're at about 5th Street and Walnut, so same Walnut Street, but like very, very different part of the city. So it was fun to be over here. And Louis is going to tell us about some manuscript fragments that he has been cataloging. Before I turn it over to you, Amy Hutchins is here in the chat. She is our manuscript cataloging librarian. So she will be minding the chat and answering questions. I will also be minding the chat. I'm also going to be minding the camera. We have an odd setup here, so at some point I may hold it in my hand and we will see how that goes. I'm also holding the laptop, which has the microphone on it, so if at any point you can't hear, please say something in the chat and we'll make sure that you can hear. And now I pass it on to Louis. Hi, Louis.
Hi, everyone. As Dot said, we're here at the CAJS Center, and I'm hoping you're able to see that we have a long table open, and thank you.
Yeah.
And we have these fragments open here on the long table, and here at the CAJS Center, we're lucky to be able to have such a setup where I'm going to be showing you around and orienting you to the binding fragments that are under MS 25, CAJS Rar Ms 25. Even though you see 6 fragments here, these are from 4 different manuscripts. 1, 2, these are from 2 separate manuscripts. 3, that's a separate one. But those 3 large leaves you see at the end are from one original manuscript. Even though they were from an original manuscript, they are what is known as sort of professional catalogers and booksellers term today as binding waste. Now, I'm a little wary of this term because it has the word waste in it.
I don't like it either.
Yeah, when you think of waste, you don't really think of valuable, important medieval manuscripts. And it also may even give some a connotation of something without value. And I think only the opposite could be true, that these fragments of manuscript, despite being much less than what they originally were, have a tremendous amount of value, research value, aesthetic value, historical value, and so on. And maybe somebody will address this term at a later point. But the first part of it, the binding, is accurate because who knows what would have happened when this manuscript was cut up and taken apart, and had it not been used as a binding, who knows where it would have been today. And being cut up is kind of like dismembering the manuscript and breaking it, taking it apart. But still, the features of the manuscript are still visible, and there's a lot that you could see from them, and it's very important to researchers, people who study manuscripts, and people who study different aspects of paleography to look at binding waste. In fact, before we get started, there's one term I've heard that I'll share with you. It's called the European Geniza. The Cairo Geniza, we all know, was a Geniza of pieces of manuscript and entire manuscripts that was just hidden away in Cairo. And that was sort of found in one spot. But I've heard the term used as the European Geniza, where pieces of manuscript are actually on bindings, on printed books, on even other manuscripts. And that is an entire world of medieval Hebrew European books and other medieval manuscripts that could come to us, and we can be able to see them and study them through bindings. And with that, I'll get started. What we have here, this is MS 25.1 or .1. This manuscript was originally part of a Bible, and then what you're looking at is one folio of a Bible. And this piece of the Bible, specifically in the book of Numbers, for those who know, this is the story of Balaam, the donkey. This is the story of the king of Moab. And this one leaf on both sides captures pretty much the prelude to the actual story and the oratory of Balaam. So this originally, as you can see, was 2 columns. We still have a complete column here and a partial column. This was cut in here. The reason it was cut was to fit a kind of binding which we don't have anymore. And this may even be the oldest fragment in this collection because of the script and the simplicity and comparisons to other manuscripts out there. I dated this one to the 13th century, probably sometime in the center, and it probably originated in Germany. You see the marks under the words include, that's called vocalization, because in Hebrew, words have different vocalizations and are read differently. And then you see even smaller ones. For example, these 2 dots here and that line here, those are cantillation. Those are how the book was read. But cantillation is usually associated with liturgical uses of it, like in the synagogue, but it's not all the time, and it's also been studied. And one final division of marks is these lines above certain letters, like you can see a line here. Those lines are called plosives, or in Hebrew it's called rafeh. That means that letter is said in a soft way as opposed to a hard way, and that actually can affect the meaning of the word. It can affect the tenses of the word. It can affect a lot of things. These parts of what was written around the text is slightly later. What's also interesting is that you can see this mark here. Thank you, Dot. That's from a later owner who wrote that. That is a mark of the Aliyah. That's where somebody's called up to the reading of the Torah in the synagogue, and they recite the blessing, and the break was there for the outgoing. How do you say this? The outgoing member to recite his, move on, and then the incoming. And it's divided on the Sabbath. That's divided. Each portion of the Torah that's read that day is divided into 7 parts most of the time, and on Mondays and Thursdays into 3 parts. So that's what that mark is. And then there's another one on the other side, and that was put in by somebody at a later time. Maybe we can even try to guess that the reason he did that was because this Bible was being used in the synagogue, which it hadn't previously been used that way. Mm-hmm. So he added to his manuscript. Now we'll move to number 2.
Okay, now we're going to try to move. I'm just going to try to move. This is attached to a chair, so we're moving the chair. Oh, that worked pretty well. All right, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay. Oh, no. Can you hold this for a sec?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. It's starting to fall, so I'm just going to hold. I apologize, because now it's going to start being a little bit shaky. All right. Okay? Yeah, here we go.
So, number 2, this collection is divided between 2 leaves from 2 Bibles, and then 2 sets of leaves from 2 machzorim, or liturgical books. So this is the first of the liturgical pieces. And what you're looking at is actually something from the 7th day of Passover. This leaf was originally bigger, As you can see, I can hold that.
No, I got it. Thanks.
As you can see, the lower margin and the outer margin are very visible, and the upper margin is missing. And a piece of this is cut out at the top. And the reason it was done that was to fit the binding of the book, and you can see the crease right down there, which was originally on its spine. Now that the bindings have been taken apart, so you're actually looking at what originally was folded inside the book. And that was not visible to people who saw the book on the outside. And for that reason, it didn't catch all the dust and the dirt and the sediment in the air. And this side is much lighter in color than the other side, which is dark.
Can we turn it over?
Yeah.
So we can see that. Oh yeah, that's a little bit darker.
And so as you can see, obviously the spines get handled the most, and that's kind of, that you could see there's dirt and sediment from people touching it. And then the ends here, probably from brushing against other books or other pieces of, maybe a piece of a bookshelf or whatever it is. This, just to tell you what this this manuscript is these are, again, on the 7th day of Passover, the liturgy, and this is a great Aramaic poem written in the middle 11th century in Mainz, and that is to precede the reading of the portion of the Torah of what had occurred on the 7th day of Passover, and that's the splitting of the sea. So it's like a great poem written in Aramaic, because that was a remnant of an earlier style, Babylonian and Palestinian style, that was in this liturgy was to precede the reading of the Torah on that day of Passover.
And when is this one dated to?
This is also 13th century.
Okay, I thought it looks similar to the.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know much, but.
Yeah,
it doesn't look too dissimilar.
This is also 13th century, and we can compare it when we get to the final piece of the very large folios from a 14th century Machzor, which is much bigger and commands a much larger presence, and unlike this one, those almost the whole folio survived through both sides of a binding, and we'll get to see that then. That's also true with the next piece that we're seeing,
Right, so
which is number 3.
Go around this way?
Yep.
Okay.
Now, this, as you could see, is where what appears, and I think it's fair to say, if not all of the original folio is preserved, almost all of it is preserved, and you could see the rich and wide margins that still exist on this, and consequently, the mark that went on the spine of the book is that way, and is very well centered, I think, between each side.
Right, so I'm just going to turn the camera so we can sort of see. You can imagine that this was attached to a book, and there's the spine of the book down the middle. Oh.
And I'm going to give this a check just to see.
Sure.
But it looks like this side was the outside. It's slightly darker, more dirty. And then the other side is a little lighter. And that's not always the determinant, but often you can determine based on what side is lighter, which side went outside and got dirtier, absorbed a lot more dust and soot from the air, and which side was protected inside.
This also has edges that look like that's where it was glued, where the glue would have been to, or however it was attached. Maybe it wasn't glue.
Right. That may be sediment from glue. It's possible what went here and created for us the sort of out image of a page was the end papers. It's possible.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Especially because I don't see this on this side, which may have been
right.
Another side. But it's possible it was something else. There's all kinds of things that could have been could have made that. But these kinds, what I found kind of intriguing is these dust marks and all these sorts of things just take centuries in the making. This one's dated to about 1300 to 1350.
Okay.
And then it's very hard to know, although there may be an expert out there who could tell me when it was used as a binding. And then I'm going to talk at the end about how we got these pieces and at least at what point they were taken apart and used as distinct manuscripts once more.
And what is the text on this? Sorry if you said it and I missed it.
I didn't say it. This is also a Bible. This is from, what you're looking at is a page from the book of Deuteronomy. So this is, okay, there's, these are portions from the laws of charity. These are portions from the laws of owning slaves, and some agricultural laws as well. Now, what we're lucky with this leaf is that it's all, let's assume, safely that it's all preserved from the entire leaf, and so you can see there are 2 lines of small script.
Yeah, I was noticing that.
And 3 lines at the bottom. There's also, in the same small hand, between the columns, there's little marks.
Yeah.
That, what you're looking at, is something called Masorah. Now, Masorah comes from the advanced study of the Bible, from comparing this word in other places, from comparing the usage of this and other things like that. And that was a very important tool for the study of the Bible in the early medieval times, in the late medieval times. And many of these large codices of the Bible would carry it, and this was the style that you would also see in Bibles that came not just from Europe, but that would come from the Middle East or North Africa, where you would have the main Masorah at the top and at the bottom, in the small lines, and then what's called the mini Masorah. The terms of these are called Masorah Magna, which is the main or great or centered Masorah. That's these lines up here, and the small Masorah is these little things here, which is called Masorah Parva. That's the term for that, and that's the small Masorah is just different variants, notes, and other small details that are associated with the study of the actual text on hand. And then the Great Masorah talks about other times in the entire 24 books of the Hebrew Bible that this word or this meaning or this type of thing to compare it to. And for example, in the Great Masorah, you'll find citations in the writings, citations in the Chronicles, citations to other things, but in the small Masorah you will not find that.
Cool.
Just make sure I got everything for this.
Okay.
And we'll move to that.
He's checking his notes.
Okay.
All right. Ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right.
We'll get to those 3 main.
Okay, and I'm gonna. All right, just give me a second. I'm gonna move this. Okay. All right. Let me know if you have trouble hearing Louis. And also, don't hesitate if you have questions. Go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll have time to answer them. All right.
So, personally, I found these 3 to be the most exciting. And it's like the previous one I showed you, that Bible, that a lot of the original folio has been preserved through the bindings. And also like that folio, you see the spines, or what was the spines, folded and running down the center, and then this one as well. And and both sides were preserved really well. But the difference is, I don't know if this can be seen through the camera, but I put these on this side specifically because here we know conclusively which side was on the outside, because these were painted with a kind of coating, which you can sort of see there, and that was done at the outside. And
so these are like brush. Are these brush marks there?
These are brush marks, and if you feel the parchment, you can sort of feel a sediment coating.
Yeah, it feels strange.
I don't exactly know what this is or what it's made from, but it's visible, and I can't even tell you whether it's helped or hurt the manuscript page or the ink, or but it's there. And these are 3 leaves from early 14th century German Machzor. This is a liturgical book, and the 2 folios facing us down here are from the Rosh Hashanah, the New Year liturgy, and this other one, which I have faced this way, is from the Yom Kippur liturgy, but it's from the same scribe, and the script can be seen as the same scribe for all 3 of the leaves. I think that these leaves the script on these leaves are very distinctly beautiful, almost. They're very well written, and although it's quite possible that more leaves from this original book are in the world somewhere, even if it wasn't, it's good that these were saved and preserved to us. There are out there very large Codex parchment Machzorim like this one, which have survived in entirety or more completion, and we know that this was from something like that originally. The different prayers, parts of the liturgy that you're looking at here, include part of the shacharit, or the morning prayer, and the repetition of the cantor, and that's what these are for. And you see the different layouts and how it all would integrate into the script block, and the fact that these have a whole different style about them. One more is that also these are where they would, for example, where they would write in smaller letters, they would write a refrain. This is to be repeated, while in the larger letters, and just in this specific piyut or part of the liturgy, in the larger letters, that is the actual portion of the piyut, and so it was repeated. And you see this in the layout. That's characteristic of these medieval Machzorim, especially the medieval European or the medieval German Machzorim like this one. And the lots of variation of the layout is also typical of the medieval and German Machzorim that you see. And these are the very large versals, the calligraphic large letters that open up a new piece of the liturgy, are very distinct, and I think are really, really well written. You could also see, because of, and maybe this was even the intention of the scribe to leave such large margins, users and owners of this item through the centuries wrote variants and wrote more of what they had to their own liturgies in the margin, and that was preserved. His script is much lighter. Probably the ink he used was not the same kind of quality as the original scribe's ink. Mm-hmm. And this just goes to show the various sort of permutations of the liturgy that would come up in different small areas, and the movement of this book to new areas where there was a small variation of the liturgy here, and then a new variation of the liturgy there, and that you see a lot in medieval Machzorim, that in the margins, different pieces of the liturgy were added. One final thing is that with the exact order and style of the liturgy here, I believe that this originated in Bavaria, and then there are similarities to the Rite of Worms, which is the Bavarian rite after a certain time, and and we have enough text present for that. Now, the final few minutes, I just want to mention how
there are
they.
Also, a couple questions.
Okay.
So when you finish up, and then we'll get.
This is just one important thing I wanted to say about all these manuscripts and how they got here. They were formerly owned by Dropsy College, which was Advanced Hebrew and Judaic Studies College in Philadelphia. And Dropsy College received them through the Jewish Cultural Reconstruction. That means that they were ownerless after World War II, but that was because the Nazis looted Jewish possessions and also Hebrew and Jewish books. And they moved through, and they were under the Nazis for that period of time during the early 1940s, and then after that, the Jewish Cultural Reconstruction was in charge of distributing heirless items often back to either Jewish owners or universities or other institutions. Lots of different things happened, but Dropsy College was one of the recipients of materials from the Jewish Cultural Reconstruction, and they received these like this. I have in my notes and in the files they recording how they received these from the Jewish Cultural Reconstruction back during the 1950s. I think the year of the gift was 1950, and at that point, and maybe it's even fair to say before World War II, these were already removed from bindings and repurposed as individual manuscripts to be used and studied.
Okay, so that was actually one of the questions was, is it recorded from which books bindings these fragments were extracted? And I'm guessing there's not that information.
Not for these. I've done other bindings before that were former bindings before, and they actually say the title of the book. Unfortunately, we don't have that information for these books. What you could see right there
I was looking at that.
is
yes.
a shelf mark, what appears to be a shelf mark. So that would possibly be the top of the spine there.
Yeah, but we don't have a title. I think there's another one over here too. Yeah, another little number, but no titles.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we don't know. But there are sometimes, and even fairly often within this binding fragments, among book dealers and others, where they'll say, "Oh, we have one leaf or two leaves of a certain manuscript, and this was bound to a book about math or something." And I've seen that often happen. And in other manuscripts, which I recently cataloged, that were formerly used as bindings, I try to note that information whenever it's present.
Okay, so there's one more question, and then we're going to have to close, and that is, are there particular times or places when Jewish communities used Bibles in codex form rather than Torah scrolls? Like, why are we looking at these codex
Right.
from Bibles?
Right. It's correct. A codex was not used liturgically strictly for the Torah itself, the 5 books of Moses. But in some communities, it was used to recite portions from the prophets or the writings. But in general, we find that in this period of history, rolls, scrolls, rotulis, those were the liturgical methods to be used, and those are the ancient Jewish scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls are also scrolls, the ones that were used liturgically and that have a ritual purpose. And then these are codices because perhaps you could speculate that they were originally meant to be studied with as a subject of study and not as a liturgical use or a ritual use, but it eventually merged. This is all us trying to figure out from retrospect, but this is what it seems.
All right, thank you. So it is past time, so we're going to sign off. Thanks everybody for coming. Thank you, Louis, for sharing these with you, and we will be back next Thursday, so hope to see you all then.